Welcome. For decades, the United States Navy has balanced its global commitments against a shrinking industrial base, aging fleets, and increasingly complex procurement cycles. And for the first time in a generation, serious discussion has returned to large-scale naval expansion. The White House's 2027 budget request for naval shipbuilding is nearly $65 billion. Shipyards are now growing. Production lines are slowly reopening. New classes of warships are entering development. The question now becomes, how can the Navy expand sustainably? This proposal is built around three ideas. Build ships once designed, stabilize, keep production lines running, and develop replacements before retiring current classes. The goal is more ships, lower risk, and a healthier industrial base. Future naval power is not just about combatants. It depends on logistics, repair, aviation support, missile reload, and undersea operations. The goal is not simply to build more ships, but to build a fleet that can remain operational over long conflicts. This is facilitated through a larger and more diverse logistics force capable of providing fuel, ammunition, repair, maintenance, missile reload, and expeditionary support across the globe. The same philosophy applies to aviation. Rather than concentrating every function on a single carrier, aviation support can be distributed across multiple platforms, increasing operational reach and flexibility. The result is that by 2058, there are 765 ships, including 42 large-deck aviation vessels, 122 high-end combatants, 120 frigates, 147 submarines, and 334 support ships. Importantly, shipbuilding expenditures remain below the current White House budget request levels, while fleet size continues to grow. The remainder of this presentation explains what is in the fleet and where it is built, beginning with Fincantieri USA in Marinette, Wisconsin. The Constellation class becomes the backbone frigate program. By the time production of the first two ships of the class is completed, the design will be mature, the workforce will be experienced, and the supply chain will be well established. In addition, follow-on ships will benefit from increasing domestic content and declining unit costs as development expenses are amortized across a larger production run. At Marinette, production stabilizes at approximately one ship per year. The objective is recurring production, workforce retention, industrial continuity, and lower long-term procurement costs. Bath Iron Works in Bath, Maine. BIW continues destroyer production. This proposal assumes the DDGX program is not pursued, with its planned capabilities instead distributed among continued Arleigh Burke production, Zumwalt-derived command cruisers, and other emerging fleet assets. Arleigh Burke production therefore continues beyond the currently planned transition point. At the same time, the Zumwalt class would re-enter production to fulfill a role much closer to that originally envisioned for the hull, a strike cruiser combining fleet command capability, advanced sensors, and a large missile inventory. The large hull, substantial growth margin, and advanced power generation capacity make it well-suited to operate as a fleet command ship and long-range strike platform while preserving continuity within the surface combatant industrial base. Electric boat at Groton, Connecticut. Groton continues production of Virginia-class submarines and Columbia-class strategic deterrent submarines. Following the conclusion of the Columbia program, production transitions directly into a follow-on SSBN program. The objective is to preserve critical nuclear submarine construction skills. Mare Island Shipyard, Vallejo, California. Mare Island is reactivated as a Pacific undersea industrial center. Production begins with conventional Monterey-class SSG and Palo Alto-class SSG submarines. This creates additional submarine capacity while diversifying the industrial base. Philadelphia becomes a second center for Constellation-class frigate production, as well as Sir Tas Tagos construction and future carrier development. The yard's flagship future program would be the Oriskany-class CVLX, a conventionally powered aircraft carrier designed to expand the reach, persistence, and flexibility of naval aviation through large-scale integration of unmanned aircraft. Unlike traditional carrier concepts that are focused primarily on strike fighter capacity, the Oriskany class emphasizes long-range intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, electronic warfare, collaborative unmanned operations, and especially aerial refueling to increase combat area coverage. A sixth dry dock is added at Philadelphia to support growth. Newport News Shipbuilding, Virginia. Newport News remains the nation's primary nuclear carriers yard. Production includes Ford-class nuclear aircraft carriers, Virginia-class SSNs, and Columbia-class SSBNs. At the conclusion of the Columbia SSBN program, aircraft carrier overhaul and refueling capacity expands. Production would also expand to include the Defiant-class BBGNX capital ship program, with steel and module work starting in the late 2020s. While the future of this program remains subject to policy and budget decisions, it is included in this proposal as a representative capital ship concept currently under consideration. The concept for this ship, as already proposed, is closer to a survivable fleet command and arsenal platform than a 20th-century battleship. The concept emphasizes survivability, command and control, drone coordination, distributed firepower, and fleet-level electronic warfare support. Though its VLS count is similar to existing combatants, the ship is to have capabilities that extend far beyond modern cruisers and destroyers, including radar deception, highly integrated fleet communication networking, warfare orchestration, and powerful over-the-horizon radars for enhanced fleet protection. The BBGNX is not intended to replace destroyers or carriers. Its mission is strategic power projection. Mobile becomes the distributed operations yard. Production includes national security cutter-derived FFX frigates, presented here in a low-end configuration for design stability and cost control. Independence-derived expeditionary vessels serving as adaptable platforms for mine warfare and unmanned operations. Spearhead-class EPF fast transports, and Bethesda-class EMS medical ships. Together, these vessels provide escort capability, distributed support, rapid transport, and expeditionary medical care. Ingalls Shipyard, Pascagoula, Mississippi. Production includes Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, FFX frigates, America-class LHA amphibious assault vessels, and San Antonio-class LPD landing patrol docks. The yard continues to serve as the backbone of amphibious warfare and Gulf Coast combatant construction. Bollinger Shipbuilding, Lockport and Houma, Louisiana. Lockport produces McClung-class medium landing ships. Houma supports Navajo-class salvage vessels and other support programs. Together they expand littoral and sustainment capacity. Corpus Christi, Texas. A new strategic shipyard is established at Corpus Christi. Expansion occurs gradually through construction of 5 major graving docks. Primary products include the Sacagawea missile logistics ships, sustainment-class fast logistics ships, expeditionary sea-base-derived command ships, or ESBCs. And as the shipyard matures, Corpus Christi would additionally concentrate on construction of the Oriskany-class conventional carrier. As a potential alternative to additional Oriskany-class production, an aircraft carrier such as the Alamo-class aircraft carrier shown here remains a future option should operational requirements, technological developments, or budget priorities favor a dedicated sea control aviation platform. Galveston and other Gulf Coast shipyards would likely be integrated into the broader Gulf Coast shipbuilding network, providing additional fabrication, outfitting, repair, maintenance, and surge production capacity as requirements evolve. NASCO Shipyard, San Diego, California. NASCO remains the sustainment center of the fleet. Production includes Lewis and Clark-class cargo ships, Puller-class expeditionary sea bases, including both traditional variants and hulls designated for ESBC conversion, submarine tenders and destroyer tenders for fleet maintenance and missile reloading, Pathfinder-class survey ships, and Robert Ballard-class deep ocean intervention vessels. Together, these vessels provide the logistics, repair, command, survey, and recovery capabilities required to sustain long-duration naval operations. The fleet expands steadily throughout the planning horizon while maintaining a stable, long-term industrial base. Fleet size reaches its peak shortly thereafter as vessels procured in large numbers during the early phases of the program begin retiring in similar numbers. Although annual expenditures increase during the expansion period, shipbuilding costs eventually stabilize while fleet size continues to grow. These projections are based on the planning-level unit costs shown here. Actual procurement costs will depend on design maturity, production rates, inflation, and industrial conditions. Growth is achieved primarily through recurring production rather than temporary surges, preserving workforce experience and reducing procurement risk. The result is a steadily expanding fleet capable of replacing retiring vessels while increasing overall force structure. Missile capacity grows substantially through continuous production of destroyers, cruisers, frigates, submarines, and strategic combatants. At the same time, reload capacity expands alongside launch capacity, reducing dependence on fixed facilities and improving wartime sustainability. Naval firepower is often discussed in terms of missiles, aircraft, and sensors, but conventional naval guns continue to play important roles in fire support and maritime strike. Comparing fleets across more than a century of naval history shows how different eras emphasized different aspects of combat power. Early fleets relied on massed shellfire, while modern fleets have traded much of that gunfire capacity for missiles, aviation, precision engagement, and networked operations. The future fleet concepts explored here illustrate that trade-off. Option A represents the proposed fleet and follows a conservative approach built around existing 5-inch naval guns. Option B incorporates 155mm advanced gun systems on the Zumwalt and Defiant classes, as well as railgun technology on the Defiant class. The result is a substantial increase in range, projectile energy, and conventional firepower, although even the baseline 2058 fleet retains significantly greater traditional naval gun capability than the current U.S. Navy. While missiles, aircraft, and submarines receive most of the attention, combat power ultimately depends on a fleet's ability to sustain operations over time. The Sustained Combat Output Index estimates the amount of combat power a Navy can continuously generate by considering strike capacity, naval aviation, undersea warfare, logistics, and command integration. Using the current U.S. Navy as a baseline score of 100, the proposed fleet achieves an illustrative score of 240, reflecting substantial increases in fleet size, magazine depth, aviation capacity, logistics support, and global sustainment capability. Because SCO measures the ability to generate and sustain combat power rather than simply count ships or weapons, it highlights a central principle of naval warfare. Combat power depends on sustainment. Logistics capacity grows continuously throughout the planning period, supporting larger deployments and longer operations across multiple theaters. Underway replenishment capability expands significantly, increasing fleet endurance and allowing naval forces to remain on station for longer periods of time. The result is a fleet of approximately 765 ships built through sustained production, gradual industrial expansion, and long-term workforce development. By 2058, the fleet would include 42 large-deck aviation vessels, 122 high-end surface combatants, 120 frigates, 147 submarines, and 334 support and auxiliary ships. The objective is not simply a larger navy, but one that can be built, maintained, supplied, and sustained for decades to come. The purpose of this proposal is not to advocate for any single ship class or shipyard, but to present one possible path toward a larger, more resilient, and more sustainable maritime force. Future videos will discuss these ships in more detail, describe shipyard facilities, explain how the fleet works with other military services, and may expound on strategic and operational doctrines. Thank you for watching.